Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today, as always, is Logan Stump.
How's it going, Jordan?
I'm doing well. I'm flying high. How are you doing with Orlando?
Flying as low as possible. I think we're on the tarmac. So the tarmac's got us, and we are not looking for liftoff. We are parking it for the rest of the year.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it really must suck to be up there at 40,000 feet flying high.
Yeah. No, it feels pretty good. Yeah. But yeah, so we are here to break down the amazing playoffs for MLS so far, especially that West. So let's go ahead and first talk, though, about the Galaxy has had some changes. They are declining some contracts. They've declined for Daniel Acosta, Kai Korniuk, Eric Lopez, O'Neal Fisher, Victor Valdez, Augustine Williams, and Ethan Zubak. Out of contract, Jonathan Dos Santos, he's gone. Sasha Klestin and Justin Vom Stieg. DC United got rid of quite a bunch, huh? They got rid of Ramon Abila, who they traded for midway through the season. Mm-hmm. Well, he was out of contract, I guess. I don't know how it's working. But Yamil Assad is contract declined. John Kempen, contract declined. Felipe Martins, contract options declined. Out of contract for Mona Bila, Giovanni Bolivar, Frederic Brion, Michael DeShields, Joseph Mora, Junior Marino, Jordi Reyna, and Chris Seitz. So lots of movement.
Hernan Losada's got to buy a whole new team. He's going to be shopping, and it'll be interesting to see if they bring in recycled players. That's what's going around on Twitter. They're like, DC United is just known for bringing in more recycled players. And not actually bringing in. Well, I mean, they brought in Looney and Luciano, but they were talking about how they tend to want to fill out their roster with a bunch of recycled MLS players recently. So,
I love that. Did you notice you called him Looney and not Rooney?
Did I?
Yeah, you said Looney and Luciano.
Looney to Rooney. They brought in Looney Roon, the Looney Roon band. So, yeah.
Yeah, so a little interesting start there to some of these teams' preseasons or postseasons as we go here. But, just a great start, I guess. Maybe this is Losada's – some of these are his decisions maybe of, moving on to different players. I don't know.
Yeah, I think bringing in your own guys is always intriguing when moving to a new club. He played well with them. I think that – obviously, they overperformed, I think. As many thought that they weren't going to be as good. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, they really did. They got good play this year. Ola Kamara was really good, had 19 goals chasing down Tati Castellanos for that golden boot. Kevin Paredes was really good this season as well. Julian Gressel played every single match and stayed fit and played well. It seems like they have that system figured out where they can play that back – I guess the back three or converted five when you really think about it. But you and I were really low on them and outperform everything that we expected. So it'd be interesting to see what he does with his own clientele.
Rumor is, too, that Paredes is going to be called into the U.S. camp for that December friendly, which will be interesting. So we've got also some other stuff going on here. Ezra Hendrickson is becoming the coach of the Chicago Fire. Apparently, it was a field of 100 applicants or more, according to George Heitz, the sporting director. So we have he was a Columbus Crew assistant, and he is getting a job at the Fire. So what are your thoughts here about the Fire and this hire? Oh, that rhymed.
The Fire Hire, also a team that I think got rid of I think we read that last episode where they were getting rid of pretty much their whole team. I even think they put Soldier Field up for sale because the Bears suck too. So, no, it's interesting. It's one that I thought many thought that they would go after a bigger hire. I know that the name wasn't necessarily what a lot of people wanted. I know reading through some Chicago Fire Twitter, it wasn't fire. It was very kind of cold. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of pieces that he's able to pick up. I would start naming players that he's going to be without, but let's see if I can find it real quick. But I know Stojanovic is left.
It was a huge list.
Huge list of people, but I think they've got most of their DP positions left on the roster. So I think they'll be out shopping for sure. But I think they need to get the stadium thing figured out. I think they need to get, fans back in the stadium. They claim to want to bring the club in, and that's what Ezra was talked about in his presser when he was introduced earlier. But he talked about bringing them back from the position that they're currently in. And for a long time there, Jordan, I thought they were real contenders for that wooden spoon if Cincinnati hadn't been so bad. So it was quite an interesting year, and it'll be an interesting year to see because he's got pretty much a clean slate to work with in Chicago. And you remember their good days when it hadn't been since Bastian was there, Schweinsteiger.
I don't know if they were good days.
Better days, sorry.
Better days. I mean, they're real good days. I still remember those when they had when they were like, geez, how long ago would that have been? Early mid 2000s. They were pretty decent.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and move on from that and talk about Coach of the Year. We kind of got this one right, huh? Bruce Arena. Named Coach of the Year. We also had Carlos Heel named as the comeback player of the year from his injury from last year, which is interesting. Does this mean that Hani Mukhtar is MVP, Logan? Were the voters throwing him a bone, or is he going home with both awards?
I honestly think he's going home with both awards. I know that Twitter likes to think that Hani's going to get the MVP. I just feel like when you have a historic team, I don't care if he's a comeback player, he can be comeback and he can be the best player in the league. Those are two separate awards. And I do think that he ends up getting the MVP just because he has been heroic. I mean, it's been a phenomenal season in which he's added so much in their attack. And without him, they played well enough to get by. But I don't think if you had a whole season without him, it wouldn't have gone well. He had 11 assists. He played only 28 matches. He was able to grab 4 goals. He wasn't prolific in scoring, but he's always been more of the guy that's setting up the attacking players. So, and if you look at their attacking players, Gustavo Bo, 15 goals, Adam Buxa, 16 goals. Buxa had been kind of a shell of himself, and now has warranted some interest for European teams in the Premier League. I know Leicester had been thrown out there as a potential candidate for Adam Buxa, but I think it's interesting because it shows just how well that the talisman is playing, and that talisman being Carlos Heel, and he's a wizard in what he does and creates in that midfield, which is why they became the most historic team that's ever played in MLS and got as many points as they did. And I'm not sure anybody breaks that record anytime soon because although it seems to be increments as we step forward, that's a really high point total that they finished with, and I just don't see where another team is going to get the 73 points that they got this year. He deserves MVP.
I think Hani Mukhtar is going to be MVP, and I think he deserves it more than Carlos Heel. I think, when you look at just, total goal contributions, I think Mukhtar's been better. I think, that time we've talked about before of Carlos Heel missing time this year, and they did not miss a beat. They got to that point total still without him being there. I don't know. I think that for me, I would go with Mukhtar MVP, and I'm thinking this might be a sign. That people saw the light.
Do you think he's 26, Hani? He had 16 goals, 10 assists. That's outrageous. Do you think that there's because he started in Bundesliga? He started with Hertha Berlin. He played some at Benfica. He played one match with Benfica, 13 with Salzburg, and then he went over to Denmark and was playing with Bornby. Do you think he has interest in going back? I feel like he hasn't written his story like he wants it, and I think there might be some interest there. I'm just interested in what you thought, because he struck me as a player as 26, like that is right in your prime. I mean, I could totally see him making a move back, because he is German, so I could see him saying, hey, I want to go see what I can do if I can make a Bundesliga move.
It's very rough for a person to come over here and go back, even especially at an age like 26.
Yeah.
I think most teams are staying away from that because, they're looking at maybe the quality of the league and say, I don't know if he can do that over here. And at that point, he does. He's 28, 29. And at that point, he's already, we can't resell him for even higher. So I don't think so. And if I'm Mukhtar, I honestly would rather be in this league where I'm playing all the time. I'm MVP and I'm, banging in goals for fun to like make a name for myself here, because, look, if he did very good these 2 years here, goes back overseas, flops and goes back to like Brøndby, like, I don't know if that really helps him at all. Maybe gets him a little bit more cash, because I feel like Nashville and any other MLS team would probably shell out more for him here because of his record in MLS.
Mm-hmm. I was just curious. I didn't know, I haven't watched it long enough to know if that had been a move that somebody has made where they kind of bounce back and forth. I know we've got the opposite, where we've got guys that grew up in this league that end up getting to a certain point, right? Where Jordan Morris kind of thing, or Dempsey, or, guys that have gone from here to Europe back here. So it was, just kind of moving pieces. I know there had been some articles written earlier this season, in like September and October, that could he possibly make a move back to Europe because that's where he came from. So,
I guess it's possible, but I just don't know what team would go out there right now and say, we need a Hani Mukhtar.
Yeah.
It would be a really lower level team, and I don't know if I'm him, if I want to be fighting relegation when you could possibly win cups here with Nashville. Like, I get there's like the hierarchy of leagues that people say, oh, well, that league doesn't matter as much. But look, like if you're Brendan Aronson right now, you're probably having a ball at Salzburg because you're winning, right? Like it's tough to win those winning atmospheres, I think, because if you go somewhere and sit on the bench or don't do as well, you probably think, if I could have stayed another year or two, maybe we could have won something there. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's got a lot to build in Nashville. He's got a new stadium coming, which looks like one of the most beautiful stadiums built in MLS. He's got a great fan base. They probably have arguably one of the best fan bases. And I know
they love him
here soon. Yeah, and they absolutely adore him. He took a little bit to adjust, but now that he's become possibly the best player in MLS. So it's exciting, and I'm excited to see where Nashville ends up, just because they've got so many good pieces that they can now build around. Now they've just got to put in some time, in the attack, and we'll get into that when we get to the Union game. But it's definitely something I was curious about, because I was watching Mukhtar play, and I'm like, he's got Europe written all over him still. He plays a very European style game, but I didn't know at that age, can he make that move back?
Yeah, him going back to Europe would be like, I don't know, like Scherzer signing for like the Mets or something.
Right. Or like, like the Rangers.
You could have won with the Dodgers, but you've gone to the Mets now.
It's like the guys that get interest from the Marlins. I'm like, why?
Yes,
what? Like, why? Or like, no offense. I love you all to death. You're one of my favorite peoples. But if you're like, leaving the Union to go play star role at Cincinnati, so I don't think that's gonna happen. It's like Jim Curtin, like unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah. let's go ahead. Is there anything else we need to talk about before we get into the games?
We broke the news of Bob Bradley.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bob Bradley, he called me the other day. He's like, where should I go? I said, Toronto, make me look smart. So he went to Toronto almost as soon as we were done recording, right? It was like the next day. It was announced on Thanksgiving, I think, that Bob was walking to his presser with Michael on Thanksgiving, I think, which they don't celebrate up there. They celebrate it earlier. So maybe that's why. But also it was nice to have a little family moment there. But Bob is going. And I know last week I said Tim Bezpachenko as the GM. It was Ali Curtis. I don't know. Bezpachenko was there a while ago, but I just totally blanked on that. But Ali Curtis is the one that stepped down. And we have Bob Bradley who's going to take over player management and also the management side as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I'm already calling it now. I think, coach of the year potential, a Bruce Arena-esque turnaround for TFC, but who knows?
It's a young squad, sort of. Like, they've got remnants of a young squad. They've got a lot of the older guys, but they've also got some young guys mixed in that I think what you say might be correct. I think that they've got the good bones to kind of rebuild that thing. It's not like this team was bad for 5 years straight. Like, they had just recently been competitive.
They were second place in the East.
Right. So being that good and kind of starting out I thought they started okay. And then they get Soteldo, which, I don't think he's there. There's been some rumors flying around that he hasn't gotten along with Pozuelo and because Pozuelo basically said in a press conference this week that he plays with Soteldo on the field, but he'd rather not play with him off the field. Meaning, they don't want to go and hang out. I don't want to go have a beer with you. Which, I think people forget that. These guys are professionals. They're going to be very professional on the field if they're good professionals, and they might not like each other. Like, we work with people we don't like, but we're professional, and we work with them because it's better for everybody else around us. So, again, it was interesting. But, when you got guys like Michael Bradley hanging around, you got Richie Larea, who's had a good season. You've got Mavinga, who's a seasoned vet and friend of the show. Jonathan Osario's, coming on, but playing pretty well. 29, not the youngest. Soteldo's 24. Kamar Lawrence is 29. So you got some younger guys kind of in that mid to late 20s. That'll give you some stuff. And then I was impressed with Schaffelberg this year. I thought that he played well. I thought at times O'Kelly looked pretty good. They'll of course, have to go place Justin Morrow and Josie. And then, of course, they were missing Ayo Akinola for most of the season, played 11 games, had 3 goals, and he was a guy that they were expecting to have a breakout year. So I think Bob's got the nice team in place. I think Bob doesn't have as much pressure as he would in LA. And I think that playing with Michael and kind of coaching his son again, you're going to get a lot of emails from different parents complaining about playing time. I think Jefferson is going to have his mom email in saying, hey, Bob, I know he's your son, but come on, Michael's looking a little tired out there. You got to get him some rest. But be interesting. Do you think that Bob Bradley's wife, I guess if he has a wife, is like the team mom and gives him snacks and stuff after the game? Is that a thing?
No, I don't think that's a thing in professional.
Bad. That's really too bad because, Capri Suns after a hard-fought game was always solid. So, jokes aside, I think TFC is going to be, like you said, a team to watch out for. And, again, I think they're going to reign supreme here pretty soon.
Yeah, we had we have another article here. New England Revolution came out today. Not worried about the layoff before the playoff opener. So doesn't that mean you think that they're worried? They're even more likely to lose now. Yeah. I feel like all this stuff being said, it's like, okay, now I feel like they're trying to deny it so much that they're going to lose. Yeah. Because look, we've seen what it's looked like for teams that have had the layoffs, and it hasn't been good. No. And
seasons.
They haven't played in how many days? 23?
23, yeah.
23 days. That's 3 weeks.
Almost a month.
That is 3 weeks of no game time. A little bit of it with probably no practice, right? Because of the international break. Or if they had practice
in freaking snow,
it was probably, I don't know, did they have anybody
I don't know
on?
if it snowed up there.
Well, Turner left, right? So it's like not even the whole team was together during the international break. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be very tough to win this game. NYCFC have been on fire recently. Like, I really worry for the Revolution, but if they get the job done, they host a Eastern Conference final at Foxborough with facing off against the Union, who they've done well against this year. But it could be setting up a perfect revenge match for the Union, who won the Supporter Shield last year, had a home game, and then the Revs came in and beat them. What if the Union go up to the Revolution and do the same thing? Revs win the Supporter Shield, they have a home game, and then they lose to the Union, a team that they've done well against this season. So, I mean, it is some story potential there if that's what happens. If not, then you have NYCFC going to Subaru Park, which could be interesting as well because NYCFC play the Union well. Union have gotten the jobs done, and not to skip to them right away, but I mean, like the Union have got the job done in the 2 games that they had to. Not convincingly, but they got it done. And that was part of that easy path, I said, like the easiest path. And now, of course, they have to face the reality that now they have a tough chance. They have to go up against the Revs or NYCFC, which would be teams to go up against. And then, West Coast side, if they can get to an MLS Cup final, Union have a shot because as we're going to transition to the West real quick, and we'll start with the West, and then we'll come back to the East, is the West has been pretty wild. All of the top seeds are gone. They're gone. We have a 4 and a 7 in the conference final on December 4th, Portland versus RSL. We had Seattle draw with RSL, 0-0. RSL wins on penalties 6-5. After not registering an entire shot in that game, missing Rusnak. Then you have we already talked about SKC beating Vancouver, so then we knew that Seattle would have to. RSL would have to face Sporting Kansas City. Sporting Kansas City take an early lead. I'm texting Logan saying RSL are done. They're not going to be able to do it, and RSL do it again. They tie it, and then Bobby Wood wins it for them. And still no Rusnak, right? And they move on against a tough Sporting Kansas City at Children's Mercies Park and move on to face Portland, who beat Colorado very similarly to the way RSL beat Seattle. I mean, Colorado was dominating that first half on Thanksgiving. Second half, Portland started coming in a little bit more. Then Colorado started taking it back a bit, and then Portland, off of a free kick or a set piece, score a goal, good volley, I thought, but hit a deflection, right? And then we had a red card for Portland as well there at the end, but it kind of got like really crazy finish at the end, but unfortunately, the Rapids just didn't have enough firepower, right? They had the chances. They just couldn't put them away. It's like watching the Union.
Yeah. I with the Rapids, too, I mean, it goes to show, I think, too, that they had a layoff. They had time where they sat around, waiting again for Portland, and I think that it had a huge effect. The speaking of the Seattle game too, it was like these bigger teams almost would say that they were a little too overconfident, didn't really think that these teams that hadn't played as well, especially RSL, who kind of snuck in Day of the Dead. Pretty much, it was pretty much them sneaking in at the last minute. I think it was like that 89th or 90-minute goal on decision day that ended up, I think it was 90th or something like that, because it was right at the end. But To get in on Kreilach's goal, to pretty much ride him all the way through into the playoffs, and now looking at where they currently sit, it's amazing, because I think some of these big teams, like you said, like Seattle, like Portland, they come into these games and really think that, they got the game in hand. They play well the first half. They play well. And I thought Seattle played well pretty much the whole first half, and then they just kind of fizzle out and disappear. They had so many chances, I think, to put RSL away, and obviously didn't convert on any of them. 21 shots, 3 of them on target, a 14% clip against an RSL team, like you said, that didn't register a shot. Mm-hmm. But the Sounders, you got to put a team down. You can't just let them hang around. I don't care if you're at Lumen Field, if you're playing on lava. I don't care where you're playing. You have an advantage, put them away. And I think that was part of the problem with Seattle. And then it became an issue when, Portland was kind of sitting there waiting. Colorado had controlled the half. Colorado played well. They were at home. The atmosphere seemed to be great on TV. Colorado had played well defensively all year. They're playing well defensively against Portland, keeping neck and neck. Portland injured, don't have their guys out there. Sebastian Blanco got hurt. And then it breaks loose, and then they go and lose. So it really, these teams had chances. These top seeds had chances to put teams away, and they just couldn't put them away. Especially at home. It was like, don't play at home. You're going to lose if you're in the West, which tends to be the case. So, and it did happen to SKC, which we haven't really kind of gotten to, but it happens to every single one of the home teams of the West. Every home team in the East has won. So I don't know. It's wild, but I don't know. What were your overall thoughts? Because as this weekend's unfolding, as this whole week's unfolding, I'm having the time of my life, because I'm seeing these underdog teams in my first MLS season where I follow all this just completely go MLS after dark and start playing with my mind. I woke up and I thought for some reason Cincinnati had a game coming up.
You're dreaming then.
But I don't know you've watched it long enough. Is this so far one of the craziest ones you've been a part of? Because the West at least has been absolutely bonkers nuts, especially with how poorly teams have played and still have won. It's shocking to me, how bad RSL was trying to convert any kind of chance, and then they go and beat the Sounders in a penalty.
Yeah, I would say it is really crazy. I don't remember it ever being
upset Centrals.
Yeah, this bad, for these big teams.
Yeah.
And even when we look at the East, right? If you're looking at the Union, they're having the same issues.
Yeah.
That that the West teams were having with dominating, not putting the ball away though. Mm-hmm. But somehow they got past it through a Glesnes rocket.
Yeah.
And penalty shootouts that the other teams, Seattle faltered in penalty shootouts. The Union looked really good in penalty shootouts, and they also had Andre Blake. So, that's something that was able to at least lean on the strength of part of the team in that regard. But overall wise, I don't remember ever the West, specifically the West, where usually we talk about how strong the West is and how top-heavy it is. The top 3 seeds are gone. Mm-hmm. Seattle, who, remember, have been in a MLS Cup final 5 years out of 6, right? Have been Seattle or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
The other one out of those 6 years is Portland, right? I think it's 10 straight years of a Cascadia team in the Western Conference final, which is insane. So in that case, we're seeing Portland, who was really good last year, also MLS's back winners, right? And you're thinking, okay, that's still a really respectable team, but the way that they were playing this year was a lot, not as good as those other teams. Mm-hmm. When you talk about it and you put it in the perspective of the Rapids, the Sounders, and SKC were literally battling on the last day for top seed in the West, and it meant nothing. It meant nothing. So
they got to I guess it depends on the order they went out.
Yeah.
They got the jockey for
Seattle went
positioning.
first, then SKC, then Colorado, right, and then SKC. But yeah, it was. I don't remember it ever being this bad in the West. Eastern Conference wise, I think that pretty standard so far. You know, a 2 seed. What was Nashville? A 3 seed.
Yeah.
Right. Versus what, a 1 and a 4, Revs and NYCFC. So I mean, like top 4 seeds are all in there right now, which is, I think, pretty. I think usually the upsets are more on the east side because it's such a cluster. Usually, you know, the West is usually pretty. While they're tough, and if they're tough all the way down, you usually have the cream rising to the top in the West. I mean, there was those years where the Galaxy were always in it too, and then you kind of had right from there to Seattle always in it. Like there's kind of been that consistency in the West. If one team leaves a vacuum, another team comes in and dominates that vacuum for quite a while.
Without the Revs, I mean, the East would have been a lot closer. Philly has 54 points. On the 7th, what is the Red Bull? They had 48. If you look at the Rapids, they had 61, and then the 7th team, RSL, had 48. So, like you said, but I will say that it did seem like, it always seems like the West, like the top teams beat, like you said, top heavy, beat the living crap out of teams below them.
Right.
Like there's never, it's you never go into a game and go, oh my God, Houston beat so-and-so. It's always like, oh yeah, Houston got smoked by Portland, or Houston got drilled by Kansas City, or, you know, where at least in the East, you do have some parity, and you do have like an Atlanta United who we thought might miss the playoffs quickly. And then all of a sudden turn that season around. They're back up to where they belong. And then if you look at the West, I mean, you really did. Jordan, I thought for sure we were going to have like a SKC Sounders, or an SKC, you know, or a Sounders in Portland, or like somebody that like one of the Cascadian teams, or one of these big heavy hitters, or Colorado was finally going to get their chance to smack around with some of these bigger teams that we've always talked about. But it ends up being Portland Timbers, who again have been a very good franchise, probably one of the more historic teams in MLS, going up against a team that nobody, especially when they announced that Albert Rusnak was going to miss a game, possibly 2, there was no way I had them going through. If I was a betting man, I would have easily have had them out in the first round after that news, because he'd been so vital to what they had done this season. 11 goals, 7 assists, always involved. He's their captain. And without him, there's no Damir Kreilach. So it's, you know, it's getting to that point where I was just like, this is unbelievable, this run that they're making. And it's not like they played well to get to specific points. They were down on decision day, got lucky, bounced in. They got absolutely manhandled in the first half, but Seattle just couldn't score. Jordan Morris looked fantastic. He looked like he'd been creating. It looked like they were going to get one to Rui Diaz. It looked like this team was laid back. They were all smiling on the bench as if they were playing some meaningless game in August. And then you got, you know, guys like that where they bounce it, and then they beat them, and they beat SKC at Children's Mercy. So it's like they've gone through the gauntlet, and now they've got to go to Providence Park. If they win at Providence Park, you might as well just give them MLS Cup.
But I'm kind of rooting for them to win in there. So I think the Union have a better shot against RSL than they do Portland. As crazy as it sounds,
a home game for Union, don't lie.
Well, I mean, they both would be home games, I think. But like, what I would want, right, is the lower seed, just because I feel like RSL's issues are almost the same as the Union's. That I feel like they have a better shot there. I think Portland could play the Union off the park if they want it, but you know. But then am I tempting fate, right? So who knows? But RSL, just really, when you look at what they've done, the head coach leaves mid-season, become an assistant coach in a Western Conference team, right? You have, you have Mastroeni stepped in, right?
Yeah. Mastroeni stepped in, and it was what's his name had left for. God, what is his name? I'm like blank. Is it Jimenez? That sounds right. But he went to Seattle. Crap. Yeah.
Just to be an assistant too, like that is.
I think it's.
Why would you give up a head coaching job for that? I don't even understand. I don't understand. I would, we see this happen. Freddie Juarez is who you're talking about.
Juarez there, thank you.
But we see who, when you're looking at, when you're looking at it, right? When you look at like NFL,
yeah,
you have coordinators leave great franchises all the time to give their shot as a head coach. And this guy gives up a head coach job to go to an assistant. I don't know why. Maybe he had some ties there. I don't know. But so he leaves, joins the team that they're going to knock out, which is crazy. Mascherano steps in. The team performs well. Like you said, they were very close to not even getting in. Let's do an exercise here. LA Galaxy get in. Okay? Do they do any of this?
No.
Or are they out against Seattle game one?
Against Seattle, yeah.
So they're out against Seattle. Then, Seattle versus SKC. Seattle wins? SKC wins. Who?
I think SKC, they would have been at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would have been SKC.
No, Seattle was second.
Seattle
yeah.
home. I'm still going to go SKC. I think they've got a better team. But.
SKC move on, and then they face against Portland still.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty interesting how things could have shook out. But now we're looking at maybe RSL ends up winning the whole thing. I remember when they won their first MLS Cup, 2009. They or was it 8? It was 8 or 9. Up against the Galaxy in the final. And I know what you're thinking. They're both Western Conference teams, Jordan. How did that happen? Well, back in the day, that didn't stop anything. There was really MLS Cup. The way that worked for MLS Cup back then was very, very odd. So let me go ahead and look at 2009. This was hosted in Seattle, by the way. 2009 MLS Cup, neutral venue.
Ew.
Yeah. So here we go. We had, where's the rest of the playoffs? That's what I want to see. I want to see the whole layout of the playoffs for 2009 MLS Cup. How do I do that? Come on, Wikipedia, show me. Road to the final. Here we are. Okay. So I'm going to give you, all right, there were 7 teams in the East and 8 teams in the West. That's how far we've come, okay? Who was the top team in the East?
In the East?
2009. Year I graduated.
East. I don't know. Are they like funky cities? Is that why you're doing this to me? Are they like weird cities?
It's like the Crew. It's the Crew.
Okay, I thought you were like doing this to me because it was like I'm gonna name like the I don't know, the Sounders, and you're gonna be like, oh no, they were in the East that year. I'm like, oh okay,
yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it was 3. It was 3 very old teams in the top 3. You had the Crew, the Fire, and the Revs. Okay.
Yeah.
And those were back then only 3 teams in each conference got in. Well, 3 teams in the East got in, 5 teams in the West got in. I guess they were doing point totals after that. Then you have in the West Galaxy, Dynamo, Sounders, Chivas, and RSL. Oh, you don't know Chivas, do you? Okay,
Chivas
USA.
Now?
No, they were folded. They were another LA team.
Okay.
And then they folded, and then they announced. Yeah, they folded, and then they announced LAFC. Yeah.
I remember them. I remember the team name.
Yeah.
Only because
they played in the same stadium as Galaxy.
USC. Did they play in USC? Is that where they played? SoCal.
No, they play in StubHub Center. Yeah. Or whatever Galaxy calls it now.
Oh, so it was still their same park. Like they've still okay.
Yeah, they've had their place for a while.
USC. I didn't know. I'd love to go. I need to go back and do the landscape anyway because I'm covering this league now, just to go through the history of it. But they were talking about games being played at the Rose Bowl at some point, and
oh yeah,
wild games.
I have a very great DVD of this, by the way. It's like MLS Cup finals from like it's highlights of every MLS Cup from the initial one all the way up to like 2006, I think.
Well, that would be cool.
Okay, so then it went. They just kind of like seeded them. However, it was awful. So like RSL entered into the east side of the bracket. Okay.
What?
Because they took the best teams from the, they took uneven number of teams. One of them had to go towards the east. So RSL goes to the east bracket. Okay. They beat Columbus. They beat Chicago. LA Galaxy beats Chivas. They beat Houston, and they get to LA Galaxy versus RSL. RSL wins in penalty shootouts. Let's see, who were the takers for the penalties? You had David Beckham step up. He nails his. Greg Berhalter nails his for the Galaxy. You had Mathis and Finley nail theirs for RSL, so it's 2-2. Then Beckerman misses his. Krivovsky misses his for Galaxy. Then Grabavoy scores. Donovan misses. Williams misses. Then Mike McGee hits. Wingert hits. Robert Russell hits. And Chris Klein and hits. And then Edson Buttle misses for the Galaxy. So it was an interesting game.
Gosh, those are some names. Nick Raimondo. And Nick Raimondo goal. Kyle Beckerman was playing then. That was like prime Kyle Beckerman too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Well, this is how good. All right, so this is this. I'm going to name this roster, by the way, because this is actually a really good LA Galaxy roster. Okay.
Yeah.
Donovan Ricketts in goal. Todd Dunavant left back. Greg Berhalter center back. Omar Gonzalez center back. Sean Franklin right back. Landon Donovan, David Beckham, Chris Birchall, Mike McGee, Edson Buttle, Jovan Krivovsky.
Omar Gonzalez played U.S. men's national team too, didn't he?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. That's a squad. Landon Donovan and David Beckham would have been. I'm so sad I wasn't around in 2009.
The manager, Bruce Arena.
Still wild to me. There's still gifs of him yelling at Beckham in them.
And then the RSL team was Nick Raimondo, Jamison Olave, Nat Borchers, Robbie Russell, Chris Wingard, Javier Morales, Kyle Beckerman, Andy Williams, Will Johnson, Yura Mavsisian, if I said that right, and then Robbie Finley. And Fabian Espindola. I mean, this was a really good team. This team got to the 2009-2010 CONCACAF Champions League final and really had a chance to win this thing. It was a really good squad. Their manager, Jason Kreis.
It's like full circle there. You got Jason Kreis and Greg Berhalter all in the same game.
Yeah. But that's what fooled everybody into thinking Jason Kreis was a great manager.
Well, yeah, I mean, that it would, though.
To get there and then a Champions League final?
Especially with an RSL team, a Utah team. I think they hadn't won like a title in 1971 was like the last time a Utah team, I think it was the Jazz, won a U.S. title in sports. So, yeah, I could imagine why Jason was a hot commodity. And then I could imagine why Bruce was, too. So it's interesting that like it's like the merry-go-round with U.S. men's coaches. Like, when are we finally going to hit the end of the merry-go-round? And all these players have connections, these American players, because it was so small. And I think that's what makes it cool about this league and covering it, because we've been able to talk to so many people, and hopefully we can increase that more next year, where we can talk to even more people, maybe get some players and coaches and former players and coaches on here, because I think it's just so fun to listen to their stories, because it is so young. It's 25 years old, 26 years old now, just celebrating their 26th and going on to their 27th and having this close knit. It's like a brotherhood of this league is like, what did they compare it? It was like a kind of like a niche club, like a niche league when it was starting out. Like people just, it's kind of like a hobby. Like you just watched it because it was wild. It had no real purpose. Like
the people that watched it were hardcore soccer fans.
What was the thing that they did that was like, what was it? It was when they you said they did a couple things that were like, one, they didn't like draws. So what did they do?
Originally they would do like this shootout thing.
Yeah. And then didn't you say there was like they were like they like ran up to the ball or something like that? And then
yes. Here it is. I'm gonna share this real quickly here. Just want to share this.
We're in a rabbit hole, but this is fun.
That's what we do here.
Ooh, the Metro Stars.
So they had a few seconds or whatever to dribble up and try to score. And that's a YouTube video on MLS Soccer YouTube that you can look up, and it says it's the best old school shootouts, and it is a whole bunch of videos of them. But that's something that they cover in that DVD I have too, which is funny. But when you look at that LA Galaxy RSL final, it really kicked off LA Galaxy. Everybody was like, can they not win it with Beckham and Donovan? Like, this is nuts. Mm-hmm. And then you have, 2010, they win the Supporter Shield. 2011, they win the Supporter Shield and MLS Cup. 2012, they win MLS Cup. 2014, they win MLS Cup. And it really just, they were the class of MLS at that point.
Oh, that's where I know Donovan Ricketts from. He was with Portland because my brother and I used to play with Seattle or Portland. Like we would switch off careers. So like we would play with
he was Jamaican goalkeeper too.
Yeah. So we would switch off careers, like playing with Cascadia, because those are the only teams that we knew being in an MLS. Like we knew of Portland and we knew of Seattle, and those were the two teams that we played. We didn't like Galaxy. We didn't know why. We just didn't. So we just would play them all the time. And that was back when FIFA. I mean, it had to have been in 2000. Oh, this would have been 2014.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because they had Jordan Morris. He was young. They had Jordan Morris. This was still when they had Dempsey. This is when they had, who did they? Why am I blanking? They had somebody else. Wasn't there another American U.S. player on that team?
On Seattle?
Yeah, defender, 2014. Who the heck was it? 2014 roster. I'm like blanking on the name now.
They had Brad Evans as a midfielder. They had Yedlin. They had Yedlin.
That's who it was then. Yep. Because that's when he
broke on the scene, and then he got transferred. Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Yep. Because we were like, oh my gosh, like it's Yedlin and you got Dempsey and you have Jordan Morris. It was like a perfect blend of players.
If you think like Seattle nowadays is fantastic, like literally that Clint Dempsey, Obafemi Martins partnership that they had for a year or two was fantastic. They were so much fun to watch back then. They still are, but I mean, like, it's amazing that team did not win MLS Cup.
Yeah, Lamar Nagel, he was really good. Yep. I remember that. Obafemi was my brother's favorite player. I was obsessed with Dempsey, obviously, because he's Captain America. I guess Anibaba was there. Stephen Fry has been there forever. Freddie Montero, he had been really young then, right?
Like that was when he was there originally, I think. Yeah, and then he left.
2014? That he'd have been 20-something years old, 26. Wow, that's fun to do. Anyway, there was Western. That's the Western Conference.
Yeah, it's RSL and Portland. But yeah, it should be a fun time. I think this is going to be a really fun matchup.
You have prediction?
Do I have a prediction? I got to pull up my prediction.
Or do you want to go to like the East and then do predictions?
No, we can do a prediction now. I think that's fine. I am going to go ahead and say, what is it? Portland RSL.
Yeah.
Call me a believer, baby. I'm going RSL. And I'll go 0-0 penalty kick win.
Espria's going to miss. Ladero doesn't seem
Rusnik is back. We know that much.
Sebastian Blanco doesn't seem to be healthy.
Oh, he tore his hamstring, I think. I don't think he's coming back.
So Sebastian's not healthy. Espria is going to be missing. How about they're going to hate me because I called Nico Ladero a temper. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to go RSL too, Jordan. Might as well. I'm going to jump on the bandwagon. 1-0 RSL at Providence Park, stunning the world. and going to their first MLS Cup final since that wonderful run that they had.
All right. And then we had a few games here. We had Nashville defeat Orlando. DK scoring very early on, giving Orlando fans hope everywhere. Then Mukhtar crashing it down in the 21st and 74th minute. Cadiz scoring in the 90+4 to really seal it. To face off against the Union, where Hani Mukhtar scores again, 3 goals in this playoffs, but he's going to lose in a penalty shootout, and Nashville is not going to convert a penalty in that shootout. What did you make of that?
That was probably the worst penalty shootout I've ever seen in my life. Not good. The 3 of them hit the moon, I think. 2 of them hit the moon. Andre Blake was good. I don't know. How did you? I mean, I feel like you had to have been nervous. Like it had to have been nerve-wracking to have the Union playing in a penalty shootout a year off the Supporter Shield, a year where they thought, hey, they thought that our Supporter Shield was rigged. Let's go to an MLS Cup. Like you had to have been nervous, like on your home turf in a shootout with the MVP lurking as one of the options that they had to put one home. And
I
Blake
was, but I think the fans helped. I think being able to make them do that shootout at the river end, in front of the Sons of Ben was great. And then with Blake, making 2 stops, and then the rest were just misses. I mean, that's pretty good.
Really bad misses too. They weren't even close.
Yes,
But I tweeted that Andre Blake, anytime he's in goal, it's between him and Matt and Turner. I think if you look over a window of time, I think over the last 2 or 3 years, Andre Blake and Matt Turner have been neck and neck as the best keepers in MLS. So I don't know, like it seems like when teams get up against them in shootouts, it's not going to end well. And with Andre Blake, I feel like he's got like a knack for seeing where the ball is going to go before it goes. Because there was times where he was like, you could see him kind of like leaning one way because you knew he was going that way. And it was like, okay, I know it's going that way. So he went. So it just makes you think too, because he's got to know statistics like this guy goes.
They look at that stuff. Right. Yeah.
So he's thought that through. He's thought things through. It just goes to show you how intelligent he is. And he's a hell of a keeper for Jamaica. So it was cool to see. I thought it was a wonderful game for the Union because it was at Subaru. Had this been a Nissan, it might have been a little different. But I think with that crowd, it is so hard to win at Subaru Park. It's really too bad that they couldn't have played as well, and kind of New England hadn't struggled a little bit, because it would have been really fun to kind of see Union play at home against the Revs. But I guess we'll go to Gillette and see what the crowd's like there with the Union. But it just won't be. Maybe. I just don't feel like it'll be as. It could be
NYCFC at the Union at Subaru.
Union. Yeah, I'm sorry about said Yankee Stadium because I forget that you were a second.
Yeah,
seed.
Thankfully not at Yankee Stadium. We don't have to see that again for the rest of the playoffs. But yeah, and we're looking at, that was how we went there. Just, I guess, quick recap on your thoughts of Orlando at the end of the season here. It's now official. Nani is leaving. Pato's leaving. What are your thoughts on maybe the season as a whole, but also getting bounced out by Nashville?
So, to start the year, and I got to go to the first pretty much half of the season, had gone to games, and it felt like a very dominant team. Nani was playing at MVP caliber levels. I know he had been thrown in there with Hani Mukhtar and Carlos Heel as potential MVP candidates. This was back in June when that was all happening, June, July.
Right.
Then you start to see his fitness kind of get worn out. He starts to get worn out, and he's an older guy. His time is slowly coming to an end in football. And it was really cool that he came to Orlando for the last 3 years, got to captain a team that was just abysmal, kind of a laughing stock of the league.
And he played well. He never gave up. Yeah. He wasn't like a Gonzalo Higuain.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other part too. He fought, and in Orlando, you can tell that's what they care about. As long as a guy's going to fight, and there's times where Chris Mueller would really make me mad this year, but you could just tell because he was so good about fighting, even when he was struggling, it made it worth while for Orlando fans. And that was the same thing with Nani. Like with Nani, it just seems like he gave his all. I think at the end of the season, he did pick up some injuries just because of how much he had tried to carry the team. And without DK around for that, I guess, 2-month sabbatical that he had, where he had some injuries or he was just, worn out from all the play that he had, that kind of really bit Orlando because they just didn't have enough. And then their defense got hurt. Antonio Carlos got hurt. Janssen got hurt. Wuhan got hurt. Joao Matinho wasn't ever fully fit. They had to go out and get Emmanuel Moss, who played serviceable. Vanderwater learning the league, so he had moments where he was good. He had moments where he just disappeared. You've got a young midfield in Benji Michel, Andre Pereira, and then you've got the wizard himself, Pereira, who's now gone too. It seems like Orlando's going to completely flip script with the Wills coming in. And I think I think if you're going to do it, now is a good time because Jordan, I don't know where they go or where did you go from here? Like where DK, I don't think is going to be around in January. I think he gets sold. I don't think Orlando gets what initially they thought they were going to get for him. Chris Mueller is gone. He's gone to Scotland. Nani's going to go, I think, probably back overseas and play in Portugal. I think it's very realistic that Pereira doesn't get asked back. His contract has expired. Wuhan's contract has expired. He would be the one that if I was going to sign somebody, that's who I'd sign. Tesho Akindele is a free agent with a club option. We know that Oscar is not going to let him go. So, I mean, I really don't want to rely on, Akindele to be the starting center forward for this team going forward. But they've got a lot of things they need to fix. Their defense is pretty solid. They can add a couple pieces here and there to kind of shore up that back line. Pedro is a solid goalkeeper, I think, as you're going to find. So I think it's all about trying to get some of those younger midfielders into the play and into the fold. Vanderwater, getting him into the fold. DK, finding a replacement striker, and then another winger because you're going to be missing some off the wing with Nani and with Chris Mueller gone. So it's going to be a project, Jordan. It's going to be a really rough year next year for me, I feel, unfortunately. But I guess we'll see what Oscar does. He got some DP spots to work with now. So
yeah.
Be interesting to see what happens. But if that U.S. men's national team becomes available, Oscar is going to be looking going, hey, that might actually be fun.
That's who I wanted originally. So we get tomorrow, or the day you're listening to this at least, Revs versus NYCFC, 7:30 on FS1. Then, by the next time we record, we will have seen the game on Saturday, Portland versus RSL on FS1 at 6:30 on Saturday the 4th. And on Sunday the 5th at 3 o'clock on ABC, Philadelphia versus the winner of the Revs and NYCFC. And then the 11th is the final. So by the next time we record, we'll be previewing MLS Cup final of 2021. And if it's in Philadelphia, I'll probably be going to that game.
Are we going to do prediction for the East and then the final, I guess? I mean, up to the final, sorry. I guess
we can do a quick prediction of the East. All we know is that it's going to be Philly versus one of two teams, and I feel like that's not as fun, but NYCFC or Revs.
So who do you think's coming out of the East? Like, if you had to pick a team right now to come out of the East out of the three that are remaining, who would be your favorite?
I might have to go NYCFC.
Really?
Yeah. I think they just got really hot at a time, and the Union strikers are not scoring. Yeah. The fact that they made it this far with their strikers not scoring is amazing, actually.
RSL that.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the fact that they made it this far, when
no Stabelko at all.
No Stabelko, no Santos. Santos missed some huge chances that would have not had that game go to penalties. But at least he's creating chances. Shabilka wasn't creating anything. That if it ends here at the Eastern Conference Final, I would be okay with that. I'd say, guess what? Get a striker, and maybe we have a shot at winning MLS Cup. I mean, that would be my takeaway with that. Starting Supporter Shield 2020, Eastern Conference Final 2021, get a striker, win MLS Cup 2022. That's kind of how I see the roadmap. But in my head, I'm dreaming also of going up against one of these teams at Subaru Park and then winning MLS Cup final at Subaru Park. That is kind of like my dream right now, that I'm like, in 2 weeks, Union could be lifting the cup against RSL. That would be great. But I sadly think Revs with the long layoff, Philly hasn't really looked good. NYCFC was kind of on a hot run near the end of the season. I think they might have the best chance, and I'm going to say that they're probably the team that's going to go into MLS Cup. So congratulations, Revolution, because you're going to be the ones to do that now that I said that.
But I'm in agreement with you. Like, I was not concerned about the Revs layoff until I've seen what happened. Like, I was concerned, but like, I am overly concerned now that I've seen what has happened. Now that I've seen what's transpired. And my favorite thing is, somewhere in the press conference, I don't know if it was Kessler or it was somebody that said that they had been training in an intense way so they're ready after 3 weeks of a layoff, which is funny to me because I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're not playing another team, so you're not getting any kind of preparation for another team. Because ultimately, Jordan, all you have to do is make sure Carles Gil doesn't make that turn, doesn't get in that midfield, make that turn, put his nose down. Because if you stop that, I'm not sure if Gustavo Bo and Buxa can put it together enough for the Revs after this time of layoff. So yeah, I think my favorite is Union. I think they defend well enough. I think when NYCFC is faced against when they're put up against the defense, especially when all you have to do is stop Tati Castellanos from scoring and you can beat NYCFC, I think you stand a pretty good chance. Being at home at Subaru, I think that Philly ultimately gained the advantage there, and they are so good defensively. Like, they even against Hani Mukhtar, who has been absolutely phenomenal. It was like he was like a ghost all night. Like, it was like he had been a ghost all night. He comes on, he plays well, and he finally, he gets one in the end. But it's like, does he really create or do anything? Because he tore Orlando through. Like, he just sunk his teeth and just tore them apart, shredded them. He didn't do that against the Union, and I don't think you can against the Union. There's a little bit of a difference there. And when you've got Andre Blake, the best shot stopper arguably in the league, it's going to be really tough. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think the Revs do beat NYCFC, I guess. But I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a lot closer than the Revs won.
All right. And then, so if that was the case, we have RSL versus, who are you saying for
I'm going to say Duke. I'm going to do it. I'm going to say your boys, the Union. I've been confident in them all year. I've talked about how good they were in the offseason. I was probably most high on them going into the season. I know that if we can rewind it back, you were pretty much freaking spot on from where you were coming from. Because you said, even with those two, even with them scoring 8 to 10 goals, that's just not enough in this league. And you're absolutely correct. These two haven't figured it out, and that's been the case. If they're going to win MLS Cup, they need Shabilka or Santos to get off the snide and score.
All right. Well, I guess that about wraps us up, right? We did our MLS Cup prediction. We'll see how it turns out, and then we'll actually make a real prediction next week when we know who's in the final. Yeah. But if you wanted to give us a follow, you can reach us on Twitter at Stateside Show, Instagram at Stateside Show, Facebook.com/Stateside Show, or email us statesideshow@gmail.com. And we will see you next time. What was your saying, Logan? Come on. What's your
saying? My saying. So do you think that if Bruce Arena wins MLS Cup and Supporter Shield, that they'll just name it the Bruce Arena?
That's awful.
You're welcome.